A black man walked through the glass doors of a luxury hotel just
Good
before
evening.
midnight.
Welcome to the
No
hotel.
designer suit.
We are so
No
glad to
expensive
have you
watch.
here.
No rolling luggage announcing wealth. Just a faded gray hoodie, dark jeans, and his 8-year-old daughter sleeping against his shoulder a circumflex euros. Her small hand still wrapped around a stuffed bear she had named Mr. Buttons. He walked up to the front desk and asked for a room. The clerk looked him over. Once. The way people look at someone when they've already made a decision and are just confirming it. Then she leaned forward slightly.
Hi, I'm checking
said,
in. The name is Carter.
Welcome,
Mr. Carter. We'll get you settled right
Sir,
away.
I think you may have misunderstood what kind of hotel this is. 14 minutes later, that same clerk handed 2 key cards to a white couple
Wouldn't be
who
an
walked
issue.
in without a
All right,
reservation.
then. We'll wait over there.
Euros.
Thank you.
With a smile so genuine it lit up the whole counter. By the end of that
Settled
night,
right away.
she would not be employed here anymore.
Good
And
evening,
the man
sir.
in the gray hoodie,
Hi,
he would be
yes, I have a
sleeping in the
reservation
finest
under the
suite
name
in the
Williams.
building, because every room in that
I
building
understand,
belonged
but
to
that
him.
rate is only
Every
available
painting on the
online. We cannot
walls,
match it here at the
every
desk.
uniform
But I
on
called
every
ahead.
employee,
You said it wouldn't be an
every
issue.
chair the
Settled
clerk
right
was
away.
standing next to. All of it was his.
Good evening, sir.
This is the story of
Hi,
James
yes,
Carter,
I have a reservation
circumflex
under the name
euros.
Williams.
And the night his useful than anger. James Carter did not look like what people expected. He was 43 years old. He had the kind of build that came from decades of real work a circumflex euros, not gym work, but the kind where you carry things, fix things, build things with your hands. Before the company, before the portfolio of 7 properties across 4 states, before the industry award sitting on a shelf in his office that he had never once pointed out to a guest, James had been a construction worker. He had laid foundations for buildings he would never be invited into. He had painted rooms in hotels where the front desk staff looked through him like he was part of the furniture. He remembered every single moment of it, not with anger. With something more, clarity. His mother had given him that. She had worked the laundry department of a mid-range hotel for 19 years, pressing sheets for rooms she could never afford to sleep in, and she had never once let it make her bitter. What she gave James instead was a way of seeing a circumflex euros. The ability to walk into any room and understand, within minutes, what the room actually was versus what it was pretending to be. The truth of a place, she told him once, isn't in how it treats the guests it's trying to impress. It's in how it treats the guests it thinks it can ignore. James had built his entire company on that one sentence. Carter Hotel Group had started with a single underperforming property in Charlotte that everyone told him was a bad investment. That was 11 years ago. Today the group had 7 properties, 240 employees, and a reputation in the industry for being the kind of hospitality company that actually meant what it said about guest experience. The Meridian Fifth a circumflex euros, the flagship property on 5th Avenue downtown a circumflex euros, was the crown of everything he had built. He had opened it himself, stood on the marble floor himself, and told his team, on that first night, what he believed this place needed to stand for. Every person who walks through these doors gets treated like they belong here. Not based on what they look like, not based on what they're wearing. Every person, every time, without exception. He had not been back in 4 months. He had been abroad a circumflex euros, a long-running contract situation that had stretched across 3 countries and swallowed his schedule whole. His daughter Sophia had been staying with her aunt during all of it, and tonight a circumflex euros, his flight landing 2 hours behind schedule, his luggage held up somewhere between the baggage belt and a sincere apology a circumflex euros. The decision had been simple. He would stay at the Meridian Fifth tonight. He had not called ahead. He never did when he visited his own properties. It was the only honest way to see what was actually happening inside a building when no one was performing for the owner. Sophia had fallen asleep in the car before they reached the block. She was 8 years old and had her mother's eyelashes and her father's stubbornness, and she had been awake since before sunrise because she had been too excited about his return to sleep properly. She had Mr. Button's a circumflex euros, a stuffed bear who had survived 4 years, countless flights, and one incident involving a hotel pool in Miami that James preferred not to revisit a circumflex euros, tucked firmly under her chin. James carried her through the revolving door with one arm. The lobby of the Meridian Fifth was exactly as he remembered it. Warm light across Italian marble. A low, easy jazz sound drifting from the direction of the bar. Original artwork on the walls a circumflex euros, including a large canvas near the elevator that James had chosen himself. A painting of a city street at golden hour, full of ordinary people doing ordinary things with quiet dignity. He had chosen it because he believed ordinary people deserved to see themselves reflected in beautiful places. He crossed the floor and approached the front desk. One clerk was on duty. She was in her late 20s, wearing the hotel's deep blue uniform with careful precision, her name tag reading *Karen. She looked up when James approached. He watched her eyes move a circumflex euros, across the hoodie, across Sophia, back to his face a circumflex euros, in the quick, automatic way of someone whose brain had already made a calculation before they were fully aware of making one. "Good evening, James said. "I need a room for tonight. Just one night, 2 guests. Doesn't need to be anything fancy a circumflex euros. A standard room is perfectly fine." Karen's expression didn't change dramatically, but something in it adjusted a circumflex euros, the quiet settling of a door deciding not to open all the way. Her eyes went back to her screen. "I'm afraid we're fully booked this evening, sir." "Nothing at all," James said. "I'm not looking for a suite. A double room, a standard king a circumflex euros, anything." "Completely booked," she said again, with the smooth, practiced patience of someone who has delivered this particular line before. "I apologize for the inconvenience. There are a number of other hotels nearby that might be able to accommodate you." "I appreciate that," James said. He stepped back from the counter. He did not leave. He found a chair near the window a circumflex euros, charcoal fabric, low and comfortable, which he had approved himself when the designer had originally wanted something more formal a circumflex euros, and he sat down with Sophia still against his shoulder. And he waited. "9 minutes after James was told the hotel had no availability, the front door opened. A couple walked in. The man was in his late 40s, wearing a sport coat over an open collar shirt. The woman beside him had the effortless presentation of someone accustomed to nice things. They moved through the lobby like people who expected it to receive them, because in their experience lobbies always had. Karen's entire posture changed. Her shoulders came up. Her smile arrived fast and genuine. "Welcome to the Meridian Fifth. Do you have a reservation with us this evening?" They did not. Walk-ins, same as James. Within 5 minutes, Karen had confirmed a room, processed a payment card with warm and practiced efficiency, and handed over 2 key cards while explaining the breakfast hours and the rooftop bar schedule. "Enjoy your stay," she said, and the warmth in it filled the entire counter. James watched every second of it from the lobby chair. He did not feel what people might have expected. Not hot rage. Not the urgent need to stand up immediately and announce himself. What he felt was something his mother had described once as the discipline of knowing exactly when the moment is. He had learned to wait for the moment. Sophia stirred against his shoulder. "Daddy." Her voice was soft, half asleep. "Are we at the hotel yet?" "We're here, baby." He kept his voice steady. "Just give me a minute." He stood up, adjusted Sophia carefully against his arm, and walked back to the front desk. "I'd like to speak with your manager on duty, please, he said. Karen's expression shifted a circumflex euros, the look of someone who has heard this request before and has a response ready. "Of course," she said. "One moment." The manager arrived in under 3 minutes. His name tag read Robert A. Circumflex Euros, Guest Services Manager. He was in his mid-40s, in a dark suit that had been pressed at some point earlier in the evening, carrying himself with the controlled confidence of a man who solves problems by projecting certainty that the problem is already solved. He had clearly been briefed before he left the back office. James could tell because Robert arrived with his conclusion already formed. "Sir," Robert said, positioning himself beside Karen A. Circumflex Euros, the two of them on one side of the counter, James on the other with Sophia sleeping against his shoulder. I understand there may have been some confusion regarding availability tonight. My colleague has already explained the situation, and unfortunately there is nothing further euros. There's no confusion, James said. I watched your colleague book a room for a couple who walked in after me without a reservation while I was sitting in that chair. I was told there was nothing available. I'm asking you to explain the difference. Robert's expression tightened a circumflex euros, not aggressively, but with the controlled firmness of a position being defended against a challenge it has already decided not to accept. Our team members are trained to use their professional judgment in these situations. I stand behind their decisions. Professional judgment, James repeated. That's correct. James looked at him for a moment. He thought about his mother, about 19 years of laundry shifts, about the way she used to come home and sit at the kitchen table quietly before she could become herself again. She had never been bitter about it. She had been clear about it. And there was a difference a circumflex euros, a significant one a circumflex euros between those two things. Standing here now in the lobby of his own flagship hotel, holding his sleeping daughter, James felt that clarity like something solid beneath his feet. I need your full name and your exact title, James said. For the record. Robert provided both. James noted them quietly a circumflex. Robert did not go back to wherever managers disappeared to at midnight. He stationed himself near the front desk with his arms crossed, watching James the way a man watches something he has decided is a problem, but hasn't yet determined how to remove cleanly. James noticed everything. He noticed the second front desk employee a circumflex euros, name tag reading Tyler a circumflex euros, who had finished a phone call and was now very deliberately keeping his eyes on his screen. He noticed the concierge on duty, a young woman named Rachel according to her tag, who had been reorganizing the same stack of brochures for the past 7 minutes without actually changing anything. He noticed the 2 guests at the lounge bar who had grown quieter, their attention drifting toward James without fully committing to it. The lobby had developed the particular tension that forms when something unfair is happening, and everyone present can sense it, but each person is waiting for someone else to name it first. James had felt this tension before, in other rooms, in other lobbies. He recognized its shape immediately. After about 15 minutes, Robert crossed the floor. He stopped near James's chair and spoke in the carefully lowered voice of someone performing discretion while still being audible to the surrounding area. Sir, I've given you some time, and I want to be direct with you. This is a private establishment. We've already explained that we cannot accommodate you tonight, and continuing to remain in the lobby after being told that is not something we're going to allow. I'm sitting in a chair, James said. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't caused any disruption. I haven't done a single thing that gives you grounds to ask me to leave. I'm not asking, Robert said. At the bar, one of the guests set down her glass. Rachel had gone completely still at the concierge desk, her hands flat on the counter. James looked at Robert's face. At the complete, undisturbed certainty of a man who had decided what kind of situation this was, and had never once entertained the idea that he might be wrong. Then I'd like you to call security, James said, quietly. I want this to be documented officially. Robert gave a short nod to the far end of the lobby. 2 security guards moved into position. They were both large men moving with the practiced ease of people who do this regularly. They positioned themselves on either side of James's chair as if they had rehearsed it. It was at this exact moment that Sophia woke up. She came awake all at once a circumflex euros, the way children do a circumflex euros, blinking into the warm light of the lobby, taking in everything. The marble floor, the guards, the tension in her father's body, Robert's expression. She processed all of it in a single, unguarded sweep. She sat up against her father's arm, pulled Mr. Buttons tight to her chest, looked at the 2 large men standing beside her with the frank, direct curiosity of a child who has not yet learned to pretend she doesn't see what she sees. Then she looked straight at Robert. Why are you making us leave? She asked. Her voice was clear and unhurried and carried further than she intended in the quiet of the lobby. It reached the bar. It reached the concierge desk. It reached the couple near the elevator who had been watching without admitting they were watching. Robert did not answer her. He looked at James instead, which was, in itself, an answer. Sophia processed this, looked at her father, looked back at Robert, working through it with the methodical patience of an 8-year-old who takes questions seriously. If their job is to help people, she said, why are they making us leave? There was no accusation in it, no performance. It was a sincere question from a child who found adult behavior genuinely confusing. But sincere questions, asked plainly in quiet rooms, land harder than anything rehearsed. The couple near the elevator had turned fully. The guests at the bar were no longer pretending to look elsewhere. One of the security guards, a circumflex euros, the one on James's left, a circumflex euros, had shifted his weight slightly, and something in that shift said he was not entirely comfortable with where he was standing. James looked down at his daughter. You haven't done anything wrong, he said, his voice steady and warm, a circumflex euros. The voice he used when he needed her to understand that the world's disorder was not her fault. Not one thing. She held his eyes, nodded once, and pulled Mr. Buttons a little closer. James straightened, looked at Robert. I'm going to make a call, asterisk, he said. He took out his phone, found the number. Made the call. It lasted less than 2 minutes. He said 4 sentences. Listened. The elevator chimed. It was an ordinary sound, a circumflex euros, the kind the lobby produced dozens of times every night without anyone noticing. But every person in that room noticed this one. The doors opened. Thomas Webb stepped out first, a circumflex euros, the chief operating officer of Carter Hotel Group, silver-haired, wearing a dark blazer he had clearly not had time to fully button before coming downstairs. Behind him were 2 other people from the executive team, both moving with the barely contained urgency of people who understand the precise weight of what they are walking into. Thomas crossed the lobby floor directly to James. He did not glance at Robert, did not look at Karen, did not acknowledge the security guards. He walked straight to James and stopped in front of him, and the look on his face was the look of a man who has just understood the full scope of a failure he cannot undo retroactively. Mr. Carter, asterisk, he said, with a formality that carried genuine weight. I'm deeply sorry you were kept waiting. The lobby went silent. Not the way rooms go silent in movies, a circumflex euros, dramatically, all at once. The way rooms go silent in real life, one sound at a time, until the only thing left was the faint jazz from the bar, which suddenly seemed completely wrong for the moment. Thomas turned to face the front desk. His voice was even, measured, which somehow made it worse than shouting. This is James Carter. He is the founder and sole owner of Carter Hotel Group. He owns this hotel. He owns the building you're standing in. He owns the uniforms you're wearing and the contracts that determine whether any of you will be working here tomorrow. Thomas let that settle for one breath, just one. I want every person in this room to be completely clear about what happened here tonight. Karen had gone pale against the dark mahogany of the counter. Robert had not moved. He was standing in the middle of the lobby floor with the particular stillness of a man whose entire map of the situation has just been replaced, a circumflex euros, and who has not yet worked out how to navigate the new one. Sophia looked at Thomas, then at her father, then back at Thomas. She pulled Mr. Buttons a little tighter. Daddy, asterisk, she whispered, just for him, you know this man. James looked down at her, and for the first time since they had walked through those revolving doors, something in his face let go completely, a circumflex euros, the careful steadiness replaced by something softer and more real. He put his arm around her shoulder. Nobody moved. That was the thing James noticed most in the seconds after Thomas finished speaking, a circumflex euros, the complete absence of motion in a room that had been building, just minutes ago, toward something loud and inevitable. Robert was still standing in the center of the lobby floor. Karen had both hands flat on the counter, as if she needed it to hold her upright. The 2 security guards had stepped back without being told to, instinctively creating distance from a situation that had fundamentally changed shape. The guests who had been tracking the situation on their phones had lowered them slightly, caught between the impulse to document and the sense that what was happening now required something more than a screen between them and it. Robert found his voice first. Mr. Carter, a circumflex euros. I want to explain a circumflex euros. We had no way of knowing a circumflex euros. The circumstances appeared a circumflex euros. Each sentence started with confidence and ran out of it before reaching a period. He wasn't lying exactly. He genuinely had not known who James was, but James had spent enough time in enough rooms to understand that not knowing asterisk is not the same as not being responsible. Robert understood that a circumflex euros, somewhere underneath the scrambling, he understood it a circumflex euros, which was why none of his sentences could reach their endings. James let him run out of words. Then he spoke. His voice was calm. Not cold a circumflex euros calm. The specific calm of a man who has decided what needs to be said and is going to say it clearly, without performance and without unnecessary weight. You're right, James said. You didn't know who I was. He paused. That is exactly the point. His voice carried across the lobby without effort a circumflex euros. Not because he raised it, but because everything else had gone so quiet. Everything that happened here tonight a circumflex euros. You did it because you looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the standard. Not because of something I said. Not because of something I did. Because of what I looked like when I walked through that door. Because of my hoodie and my daughter and some judgment you made before I had finished my first sentence. James looked at Robert, then at Karen. Then let his eyes move briefly across the room. My mother worked the laundry department of a hotel for 19 years. She came home every night carrying something that never fully left her a circumflex euros, the weight of being made to feel invisible by people who had decided before she opened her mouth that she didn't matter. She never talked about it directly, but I understood it. I understood it when I was very young. He kept his voice steady. I built this company because I believed it didn't have to work that way. That the person standing at a front desk a circumflex euros, any front desk a circumflex euros, deserves to be treated with dignity before they've proven anything. Before you've checked their clothes, before you've decided whether they fit the image of the kind of guest you were expecting. Every person, every time, that is not a preference or a goal. It is the foundation this company was built on. He looked at Robert. You didn't just fail a customer tonight. You failed every person who has ever walked through a door like this one and been made to feel like the space wasn't meant for them. You failed the standard this hotel is supposed to represent. And you did all of it in front of my daughter. Robert opened his mouth. Robert, James said, quietly, you're terminated effective immediately. He looked at Thomas, who stepped aside to make the arrangements. Robert's face went through several things and settled into something gray and still. Whatever argument he had left in him, he chose not to use it. He straightened his jacket once a circumflex euros, the small, automatic gesture of a man trying to hold onto the last piece of his dignity a circumflex euros, and walked toward the back office without another word. James moved to the front desk. Karen looked like she had not taken a full breath in several minutes. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes had the particular quality of someone working very hard to hold themselves together. James stopped at the counter and looked at her directly. When he spoke, his voice was even, not unkind, but completely clear. You made a choice tonight based on how someone looked. I want you to sit with that a circumflex euros, not with what it cost you professionally, but with what it actually means. What it feels like to stand on the other side of that decision. He paused. I'm not ending your career here, but you're going into a full retraining program. Not skills-based a circumflex euros, values-based. You're going to spend real time understanding what this work actually is and who it is for. If you come out the other side and still want to be here, the door is open. But what happened tonight cannot happen again. Not to anyone. Karen nodded. It was small, but it was real. James walked to the concierge desk. Rachel had been standing motionless through all of it, her hands flat on the counter, her expression carrying the tension of someone who is bracing to be held responsible for something they didn't do. James stopped in front of her. His voice dropped a circumflex euros, quiet enough that it was only between the two of them. You saw it. You knew something was wrong and you couldn't say anything. I understand why a circumflex euros. The structure here made that genuinely difficult. That is a failure of leadership, not of your character. Rachel started to speak. James continued gently before she could. But I watched you tonight. The way you tracked what was happening. The way something in you recognized where the line was, even when you couldn't step across it. That matters to me. Starting Monday, you're moving into a supervisory position in guest experience. Because I need people in roles where they can actually act on what they know is right. Rachel looked at him for a moment. Something crossed her face, a circumflex euros, relief, resolve, something that lived between the two. I won't let you down, she said. I know, James said simply. He turned to face the room. The guests who remained were watching him openly now, a circumflex euros. No pretense, no phones at angles. Just people who had been present for something real and were waiting, in the specific quiet of a room that has been through something, for what came next. James spoke without preamble. I have been building hotels for a long time, and the only standard I have never been willing to negotiate is this one. Every person who walks through our doors is treated with respect. Not based on what they look like, not based on what they're wearing, not based on whether they match the image of someone we were expecting. Every person, every time, without exception. That is what this company is and what it is going to stay. He looked around the room once more. If anyone here a circumflex euros, anyone a circumflex euros, cannot genuinely commit to that standard, I would honestly rather you find somewhere else to work. Not as a threat, as the simple truth of what we are. The room held the words. And then Sophia a circumflex euros, who had been standing beside her father through all of it, Mr. Buttons tucked under her arm, wearing the serious, focused expression of an 8-year-old who has decided that whatever is happening is important, and she is going to understand all of it a circumflex euros, looked up and tugged once on his hand. Daddy asterisk, she said, her voice carrying perfectly in the quiet. Can we please get our room now? I'm really, really tired. Something moved through the room like a current a circumflex euros, not quite laughter, but something adjacent to it. The sound of a group of people who have been holding tension and have finally found somewhere to set it down. Even Thomas pressed his lips together hard against a smile. James looked down at his daughter, at her earnest face, at Mr. Buttons, at the completely unironic sincerity of a child who has patiently waited through an entire moment and is now ready for it to be over. The thing that had been sitting in his chest all evening a circumflex euros, the weight of it, the old familiar weight a circumflex euros, finally shifted. Not gone, just moved into something that had more room in it. Yeah, baby, asterisk, he said. We're getting our room right now. Four months later, on a quiet Wednesday afternoon, a family came through the revolving doors of the Meridian Fifth. Two parents, travel-worn, dressed for practicality rather than impression. 3 kids behind them, a circumflex euros, the youngest asleep in a stroller, the middle one dragging an overstuffed backpack, the oldest walking with the specific self-possession of a 12-year-old who has decided she is too old to hold anyone's hand in public. Rachel was at the front of the house when they came in. She crossed the lobby to meet them before they reached the desk, introduced herself by name, asked how she could help make their stay comfortable. She did not look at their luggage, did not assess their clothes. She looked at them a circumflex euros, at the tired eyes of the parents, at the kids struggling with the backpack, at the youngest still sleeping peacefully in the stroller a circumflex euros, and she smiled the way people smile when they actually mean it. Within 2 minutes, the parents' shoulders had come down from somewhere near their ears. Within 5, even the kid with the backpack had allowed someone to carry it without negotiating the terms. In the far corner of the lobby, James stood with Sophia beside him. He had come for a scheduled review this time, wearing a proper jacket instead of a hoodie a circumflex euros, though Sophia had still insisted on bringing Mr. Buttons because Mr. Buttons went everywhere, and that was not a point open for discussion. They had been there for 10 minutes. James had not announced himself to the floor yet because he wanted to see this first. Just the ordinary work of the place. the everyday version of the thing he had spent 11 years trying to build. Sophia watched Rachel lead the family toward the desk, watched the kids' faces when Rachel said something that made them laugh, watched the parents breathe. Then she looked up at her father. "Is that what it's supposed to look like?" she asked. James watched the youngest child wake up from the stroller and immediately reach for her mother without crying a circumflex euros, the particular trust of a child who has just woken up and found herself exactly where she expected to be. He watched the kid with the backpack finally smile. "Yeah, James said. "That's exactly what it's supposed to look like." Sophia considered this with the quiet, thorough seriousness she brought to things that mattered to her. Then she nodded once, tucked Mr. Buttons under her arm, and reached up to take her father's hand. James held it. They stood together in the corner of the lobby he had built a circumflex euros, watching the place finally, fully, become what he had. James Carter said something once, in the early days of building his company, that I have never stopped thinking about. He said, "The person who deserves dignity the most is not the one who can prove they belong. It's the one you never thought to question." He learned that from his mother, and he built his life's work around making it real. Here is what I believe. Dignity is not a reward for the right appearance. It is not something you earn by arriving in the right outfit, or carrying the right luggage, or looking like the version of a guest that someone behind a front desk had already decided to expect. It is the starting point. The floor, not the ceiling. Every person who walks through any door a circumflex euros, any door at all a circumflex euros, deserves to be treated as if they belong there. Before they prove anything, before you check what they're wearing, before you decide. That is not complicated. That is not even extraordinary. That is just what is right. If this story stayed with you a circumflex euros, if it reminded you of a moment when you were made to feel like you didn't belong, or a moment when you wish you had said something and didn't a circumflex euros, subscribe and stay with us. We tell stories like this one every single week. Stories about people who